Podcast.
Hey, this is Rich McDonald, and I play Commander David Mason on Call of Duty Black Ops 2. And you're listening to Everything Geek Podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldovar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek Podcast.
Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek Podcast.
Hey, it's James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Plo Koon in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Everything Geek, the podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek Podcast.
Hello everyone, this is Rory Williamson of the Everything Geek Podcast, and joining me here at London Film and Comic Con is a very special guest. We have actor John Morton, best known for playing Dak Ralter in Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, Nate in Superman 2, airline pilot in Flash Gordon, Robert Wilson in Oppenheimer, and US Padre in A Bridge Too Far. He also played Boba Fett in one scene in The Empire Strikes Back. John, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's always good to be back to my home in the smoke here in London.
And my first question is, are you enjoying the event so far here at London Film and Comic Con? It's a pretty big show, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'd heard that these were the biggest that Showmasters was doing, and this is the first time I've had a chance to do work at the Olympia. As some of you might know, I was based here in London for many years, and when I wasn't acting, I was doing work as a stage electrician and lighting and sound designer. And the Olympia was never a place I was able to get to, so this is my first time, and it's very, very busy for a Friday. So they're expecting huge crowds tomorrow and on Sunday. So it's been busy at my table, and from what I can see around here, everybody else is really popping.
Yeah, definitely. I can completely understand. Like, it's pretty much the biggest convention in Europe as well. It's regarded as, not just in London. So, yeah.
I don't know how that compares with the Star Wars celebrations in Essen in the London show, but there's a celebration coming next year that should be pretty big. But what's really neat here is they've got so many of the Star Wars actors, some of whom this is their first or second convention, so there's quite a reunion for a lot of us, and I'm meeting some people that I didn't know previously.
Definitely. My second question, for our listeners who may not be familiar with your background, can you tell us how you decided you wanted to become an actor in the first place?
Well, Rory, I have to admit it was rather accidental. I had hoped to be working in documentary film in the UK in the 70s, and I ended up doing a fair amount of stage work as a musician and electrician, and it was as a musician I got cast in a musical that opened at the Orange Tree in Richmond, and it happened to transfer directly into the West End. And it was at that point where I picked up an agent, and the agent said, well, I think I can get you work in film, and so I ended up doing a part in A Bridge Too Far, and that led to other film roles, and that's how The Empire Strikes Back came.
It's very interesting. Moving on to my third question, how were you cast to appear in Empire Strikes Back as Dak Ralter?
Well, it was pretty straightforward. Normally, for under five line roles, you have a casting director that contacts your agent and the agent submits you, and the casting director says, okay, I think you'd be good, and they'll make a recommendation to the production company and the director. In this case, it was a woman named Irini Lamb, and the call came in, and the agent contacted me and said, you've been cast as one of the rebel pilots for Empire Strikes Back. So I showed up on the set, and they said, well, you're a rebel pilot, and you're going to be playing Luke Skywalker's co-pilot. And I thought, oh, that's really good. And they said, well, that's the good news. The bad news is you're already dead. But I didn't have a problem with that, because I sort of felt that they would, people would remember Skywalker's co-pilot, and they did, because he had that wonderful line, right now I feel like I can take on the Empire all by myself, and I frequently signed that for autographs, and that was in many ways inspirational for a lot of people, so I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, definitely. I can understand, it's so inspirational, like, just the way he comes out with that, like, it's pretty badass in a way. Yeah. Also related to Empire Strikes Back, as well as Dak Ralter, you got to play Boba Fett for one scene in The Empire Strikes Back. How did this come about?
Well, you say badass, that was the badass line to beat all, because Boba Fett in the scene that I played on Bespin says to Darth Vader, he's no good to me dead. And that's rather threatening, sort of putting something in the face of Darth Vader saying, don't mess me around, and living to tell the story. So, I was very proud of that and didn't realize the significance until much later. Jeremy Bulloch, who's about my size, was cast in a production to do 2 days' work elsewhere, and the company let him go. And since they had me on a daily rate anyway, they decided to get some work out of me. So since I was about the same size as Jeremy and had worked with the production people, the crew, in a number of other films, they knew that I was a guy that could do the job and didn't cause any troubles, and so that's how I was cast. I stepped in for Jeremy so he could be released to do another show.
It's very interesting. Thank you for that. As well as Star Wars, you also appeared in Superman 2 as a character called Nate. What do you remember of working on Superman?
Well, that was pretty amazing production, and the thing that I am most tickled by in that film was appearing on the set on the set of the Moon. And what I remember mostly that was so fascinating was when you stood where the camera was set up and you looked next to it, down where the lens was pointed, you really did feel like you were on the moon. It was a huge soundstage, and it was lit in such a way that you really believed you were on a lunar landscape, seeing the horizon. I mean, it was a gigantic space. It was fantastic. That, I think, was the most impressive.
That's great. And for my final question, do you have any upcoming acting roles or anything else coming up that you would like to talk about?
Well, I haven't really been in the business as an actor for many, many years, but I have been writing for Lucasfilm on their website on StarWars.com. And most of my creative work these days is as a writer. I've published 3 books, and I'm working on a 4th. Lucasfilm uses me to blog on their blog site, StarWars.com, and I think that's going to lead. We're in discussions with them to do some creative writing for Lucasfilm. I can't go into too many of the details, but I think you're going to see me doing more work in what Lucasfilm is doing in the books.
Thank you so much for your time and talking to us.
May the Force be with you.
So that was our interview with actor John Morton. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. So make sure to check out our podcast links, check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast, check out our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/users/everythinggeekcast, check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp, check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/official everythinggeekpodcast, check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Email us at the below email, everythinggeekpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our companion podcast, Everything Geek Comic Cast, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekcomiccast. Make sure to check out the host's YouTube channels. Mine is www.youtube.com/user/Sepvidus Destroyers. Check out John Morton on Twitter,